Hello everyone. So far we have seen some approaches to teach English language like structural approach, situational approach. So today in this class we are going to see about communicative approach to teach English language. So what is communicative approach? It is a method of teaching a foreign language which stresses the importance of learning to communicate information and ideas in the language. So, to be simple, it is a kind of foreign language teaching which is based on the communication using the target language. So, what is communicative approach means? It is teaching English language through some communicative activities. Like the other approaches, this communicative approach also has some set of principles and the role of teachers and learners in the classroom, the curriculum of communicative approach, and also it has its own advantages and disadvantages. As I said earlier, this approach also has its own principles. So we'll see one by one. The first and foremost principle is the learners learn through using to communicate with some activities. So the teacher will give lots and lots of communicative activities while teaching the target language. So next one is authentic and meaningful communication should be the goal of classroom activities. So the role of teacher is very important in this approach. Why? Because the teacher has to give lots of classroom activities which has to be authentic and meaningful for the students. Okay. So next, fluency is an important dimension of communication. You know very well, communicative activities means it will help us to communicate in English. So obviously, fluency will be given more importance in this method. Sorry, in this approach. And learning is a process of trial and error, and it also contains lots of creative and constructive activities which the teacher has to create on his own, or the teacher has to construct some tools for making the students to involve in some communicative activities, so that through those activities and process the students will be able to communicate in the target language, and which makes them to learn English in a natural way. The role of teacher in this approach is very important. So the teacher is the facilitator, so he or she has to facilitate the communication process in the classroom, and the teacher acts as an independent participant within the learning teaching group. So the teacher not only facilitates some activities, and also the teacher participates in some communicative activities along with the students. So it will be a kind of motivation for the students, and also the students will learn from the teacher as the teacher is doing some activities for the students. So the teacher is also expected to act as a resource, an organizer of resources, a motivator, a counselor, a guide, an analyst, and a researcher. So when I say the teacher is expected to act as a resource, so the teacher is a resource for a student. So the students can make use of teacher as one of the participant, or so the teacher can be used in any ways in this approach. The teacher can be a motivator, a guide, and etc. So there are many other minor roles of teachers. Some of these would include being an actor or an entertainer. Sometimes the teacher can, when the teacher participates along with the students, so he acts something for them, and also he becomes an entertainer for them. So these are some major as well as minor roles of teacher in this approach. So here the teacher is a facilitator, the teacher is a motivator, the teacher is a guide, the teacher is a uh, entertainer, actor, etc. So what the learners has to do? So here in this approach, the learner has to participate in classroom activities, which is based on cooperative approach of learning. So when I say cooperative approach to learning, so the activities will be for both the group and also for individuals. So when the students are participating in a group activity, so everybody has to cooperate. So it also brings some what is that, some moral value among the students too. So when they participate along with their group, some kind of values will also be integrated to the students along with this academic. The learners are expected to take responsibility for their own learning. So here the learners are responsible for their learning activity. So why? Because they are given lots of activities, and through those activities they have to learn something on their own. So the responsibility rely on them. So and they should not rely on teacher. So the teacher is a facilitator, and he is a model to them, and the students has to make use of teacher. Here the learners are encouraged to speak and communicate from the beginning. The students practice the target language a number of times, slowly building on accuracy and fluency. And the students interact with each other in pairs or groups to encourage a flow of language, and they maximize the percentage of interacting time rather than just listening to the teacher or student. They will start interacting among themselves, and also they will interact with the teacher. The materials used in this approach falls into three broad categories. The first one is text based material, the second one is task based material, and the third one is relia, that is real objects. So these are the materials which are used in communicative approach. So text based material, so this kind of material will be available in all the textbooks. For example, practicing exercises, reading passages, gap fillings, recordings, etc. So this will be found in almost all the books. So after a lesson there will be so many activities like fill in the blanks, match the following, and so many activities or exercises will be there. So such activities or exercises were not just given to memorize the lesson or understand the lesson. So those activities can be used for developing the communicative skill among the students, and also they will learn something to communicate with those activities. So that's why such kind of activities are given in the book backup. Okay, so those activities will come under text based material. So from the text there will be some material through which the teacher can conduct some activity. Okay, so those from those exercises the students will learn something to communicate with English language. So next is task based material. So task based material, that includes some role play cards, materials for drilling, pair work task, etc. So they might be used to support real life tasks such as booking into a hotel, or job interview, or some teacher student conversation, or some shopkeeper and customer conversation. So such kind of task can be given for the students with some materials. Okay, so task based material means the teacher should give some material through which the teacher can conduct some task. So for example, the teacher can give some picture and ask them to talk about that picture. The teacher can assign some roles for the students and make them to speak on their role. Okay, so this kind of activity is called as task based material, and for this the teacher has to collect some material on his own, or based on the ability of the students, the teacher can find out some materials which can be used for classroom activities. Okay, so in this communicative approach, the role of teacher will be very important, and the teacher has lots and lots of things to do in this activity. The teacher cannot simply come and teach the lesson and go. Why? Because the teacher has to create lots of activity through which language can be learned in a natural way. Next, real objects. This includes things like magazines, newspaper, fruits and vegetables, maps, etc. So the teacher can use some real objects to make some activities inside the classroom, like the teacher can make use of the blackboard in the classroom, the teacher can make use of the chalk piece in the classroom, the teacher can make use of some magazines, a newspaper in the classroom, or the teacher can make use of things outside the classroom like trees, bicycles, some shops, so whatever it is. So when we are using some real objects for conducting an activity or teaching process in this approach, it will be very much interesting for the students to talk or do some activity based on some real things. Okay, so that's why real objects can be included in this approach. Why? Because it will create some interest among the students, and they will actively participate in whatever activity you are going to conduct. Okay, so that's why the teachers will be using some real objects while they are teaching. So because the students are very much eager to see some other things than normal day to day classroom teaching. Okay, so real objects are used in this approach to create some interest among the students. So like every other approach, this communicative approach also has its own advantages and disadvantages. So the advantages are language is acquired through communication, and this communicative approach allows learners to use the target language in a meaningful context. Then communicative approach can be adapted to any level, that is primary or higher secondary or whatever level may be. And some of the disadvantages are sometimes giving lots of activities may become bore for them, or it can be a monotonous thing. So whenever the teacher conducts lots of activities, it will be interesting for them in the beginning, but if the teacher is giving activity in all the classes, that sometimes some that may be boring for few students. Okay, and in this approach the teacher does not focus on error correction. So in activities, in communicative activities, obviously the students will be making lots of errors in while communication, but the teacher does not give importance for correcting those errors in this approach. Okay, because sometimes the teacher may miss those errors. Okay, then students may produce some grammatically incorrect sentence in this approach. So, like other approaches, this communicative approach also has its own advantages and disadvantages. So, to be simple, communicative approach is nothing but teaching English language through some communicative activities. So, that is communicative approach. Thank you.